Oh, this is fun. And we are live.
Hello.
Woohoo!
Hello. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Solidify Your Business with Marielle and Sue today. Sue, thank you so much for joining us. We've been looking forward to this episode for a whole week, almost a week, right, Sue? Because we are talking about the unseen emotional part of bringing your creation into the 3D world and how crazy that can feel. It all starts out being, I have this beautiful idea. I want to create this thing. And then once you get into the nitty gritty of creation, there's so much that's going on behind it. So, a quick story and how this came about, and then I'm going to let Sue introduce herself. Well, I'll introduce her and let you tell everyone a little bit more about yourself and your business. Sue has been a mentor of mine for a few years already. And so I always say I wouldn't be here without Sue because you know how to put me back together when I need it, Sue. So thank you so much. And recently I was having an energy clearing, a healing, and we just get into these deep conversations. And this one was all about creation. And I've been busy behind the scenes creating something new. And I said to Sue, I am just creating in a whole different way, but it feels so painful. And that's how we got to talking about this. And it really made me think about a lot of my students and how they feel when they are creating and birthing their own offers into the world, and how vulnerable a space that can be and how scary it can also be. So we're going to talk about all of that today. We're going to talk about what's happening behind the scenes, how to create not only profitable businesses and offers, but also very in alignment with your purpose driven offers. How to get people to raise their hand for you even before you launch it, and a lot more. But before I do that, I want to, first of all, thank you, Sue, for joining me. And I always want to have you on my live streams. I know you're very busy, but just having your wisdom is when people ask me about, Sue, because I talk a lot about you, I always say, you know what? I could probably say that there's probably only a handful of people in the world that understand energy and energy healing and the forces of creation in the universe as much as Sue, as much as you. I mean, you've been to Japan 22 times. I can't even imagine that. So, Sue, I'm going to let you talk and take the stage.
Oh, hey, Marielle. Thanks for having me. I just love sharing. And so thank you. So, what do you want to talk about?
So I want you to tell everyone a little bit about you. And so everyone has a little bit of reference into who you are, what you do. Sentence or two.
I always forget that part. Okay, let's let's talk. Let's have a conversation. So, I was the kid that saw things and heard things. I had a very active spiritual life as a child. My mother would drive around and, I'd see period people, in period clothing, horse and carriage and farms and all that stuff. And, I didn't know any difference because we only look through our own experience, right? We don't know how other people are experiencing things. And isn't that funny? Because that's where projection comes from, right? We think that other people are having this experience when it's really our experience, right?
That's true. That's very,
Mm,
very true. And
yeah.
okay.
And so I lived my life and, I had a strange experience when I was about 19. I woke up and I was crippled. Like I couldn't walk. I ended up in the hospital. It was both ankles, both knees, both elbows, both wrists, terrible pain. And I began the journey down the medical rabbit hole, and biopsies and tests and everything came up negative, but I couldn't walk. I was in a lot of pain. I was hospitalized. And so every doctor gave me a different diagnosis. The first one was phlebitis. It wasn't that. Then it was vasculitis and a whole litany of them because every specialist had to have their answer. They were God.
Of course.
They had to have an answer, right? But anyway, that began my journey into self-healing. I didn't know if I was living or dying. And so I had a,
Wow.
yeah, by that time I was about, 20 or so. I never thought of my mortality. Now I'm 65 on the other side of the coin. It would have been a different story, right?
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. So the only thing that worked was aspirin. They said, stop taking aspirin when your ears start ringing. The aspirin never took the pain away, but it took the edge off. And but that was 18 aspirin a day for
Wow.
almost probably 2 decades. I got married, I had 3 kids. Each pregnancy went into remission. But I was searching for my healing. I remember saying to a doctor, well, what about food? Like, what can I do? Because there was no answers. And he raged at me. Food has nothing to do with health.
Oh my gosh. You are what you eat. Hello.
Well, science has changed in 40
Yeah.
years, you know? And that's like a really important message is science will continue evolving and our answers will continue evolving. So what is the best tool to develop? It's us, right? We are the tool of our universe. And that's where I ended up. I was studying energy work, but there was always limits to what I could do, who I could serve. I knew there was more. I just in, intuitively, I knew there was an answer, and I just kept searching for the answer. So, like you said, I found a teacher, an authentic spiritual teacher that, where it's an ancient lineage. So it's ancient, not new age. It's not new, it's old, right?
It's old
Thousands
age,
of
not
years
new
old.
age.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so it has sustained the test of time. It has been tested. There's a path that others had walked before me, and it worked because it's thousands of years later. And I found it, and it really was a game changer.
Yeah.
Because I had direct contact, I spoke with spirit, like I saw things, but there was a glass ceiling. At one point, I hit a glass ceiling and I couldn't get around it, under it, through it. Um, I
Oh,
was
that glass ceiling. It's like there's glass ceilings everywhere and everything.
There really is. There really is. And if you're going to go for your gold ring, you're going to find your limits. Like, you're going to break through them, or you're going to have an opportunity to learn something else.
That's right.
Yeah.
Always. There's always
Yeah.
room for growth and learning on this path. So,
Well, that's the beautiful thing of life. It's really all about us rediscovering who we are. Because at one point in time, way back before we were born, we knew we were this divine spirit. We came into this world to remember who we are. And so, yeah, if you're playing the game, you're going to fail a lot. Yay, right?
yay.
You're going to find ways that it didn't work, right? But the real champion is the one that gets up repeatedly, repeatedly, and continues.
Well said. Well said. And that's actually a great segue to what we are talking about today.
Mm-hmm.
Because here I am, I'm in your office and we're talking, and I'm like, I'm just creating this new thing. And, I'm doing it in a whole different way. And yet it feels so vulnerable. And it feels like I have 2 children. And I'm like, it feels like I'm giving birth. And it's not my first birth. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time already. And I have to say, every single time I create either a new funnel or a new offer or a new something that comes from me, it just feels so cathartic and scary. And yeah, I mean, and with that said, I have created offers in the past. I've created so much that some of them have worked and some of them haven't. So it's what you're saying right now, the more you do it, the more you're going to fail. And eventually it's for those who are willing to look within, get back up and do it all over again.
But you didn't fail.
No, but at times it feels like some offers that I've created have done amazing. I mean, they've built my business, and others are sitting in my library on Kajabi or on wherever that course is hosted, and they kind of collect dust. And here's something really interesting about that as I've been create in this process of creation myself of this new thing that I'll be launching within the next couple of weeks, I have gone back to those old other courses and it never fails. I'm like, oh my God, I created this. Oh my God, I totally forgot about this. Oh wow, I can use this for this. And that really is telling about the process of creation and how it comes in layers sometimes, and all the intricacies, all the things that go on behind the scenes, and how sometimes those, we do create in layers. And even when you think that something, quote unquote, didn't work out or failed, there was something in that process for you to take with you.
Mhm.
And which I'm proving to myself because I'm like, oh, wow, I can't believe I created that. I totally forgot about that. I'm going to be able to use that again. And now it has a whole nother flavor. So why don't we talk a little bit about
But
how
can I say something?
absolutely, yes.
So this inspiration came in,
Mm-hmm.
you followed the breadcrumbs.
Yep,
See, creating isn't linear.
exactly.
And so you created something and then you were wise enough to store it someplace. So sometimes this is about like, how do we manage this heavy existence, on this planet? But you went back to it and then you repurposed it. It wasn't for naught. Like sometimes you learn multidimensionally.
Yes.
It's not just about that product, but maybe what you needed to get there. Maybe you were working with the forces of creation. You created something. It was a passion, an inspiration. You brought it down to the four worlds. You created it. You just didn't know how it would apply. So you wisely put it someplace and then you came back to it. You had fun.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And when you first go on the path of creating something new, you have that idea, that inspiration, and it feels so exciting. It's kind of like creative chaos, but that creative chaos feels so exciting because it's full of endless possibilities. And so for a lot of people, it's so fun to just kind of stay in the idea of it and indulge in that creative chaos. But the reality is that if you are looking to actually make a living from that idea, that brilliance that's rightfully yours, you're going to have to, like you said, bring it down through the four worlds, right? Do you care to say what those four worlds are?
Yeah, they're the four elements. They're earth, water, air, fire. Fire is inspiration, the spark of create. Air is the thought process. We've gotten that inspiration, and then what? Because when you said that everybody loves, I would challenge that. It
Hmm.
could be very scary to some people. So we are also learning more about who we are. If we don't trust ourselves, if we have doubts, like where do we get stuck? All this stuff is really, really important on this discovery of creating. So we have that inspiration, we bring it down into the air, we start thinking about it. What do we want it to look like? And we start like seeing it, right? And
Correct.
interestingly enough, air is right here. So we start seeing it, we start speaking about it, communicating, and then we bring it into water. And that's all the planning phase, really bringing it down into a denser form. But we can't forget the planning stage. And then we bring it into earth where action and manifestation and all that happens. And then we can see where we get stuck. I am notorious. I get really great ideas. I start thinking about it, and then I just want to put the flyer out, right? And so where do we get stuck? So we can all look at ourselves. Where do we get stuck? If you are not balanced in any of those four areas, it's going to be really tricky having something come out that is well thought out, well put together. And if you don't um, take action, nothing happens. So all four elements are really, really important.
Exactly. And it's so easy to go from idea to, for people who are like fire, for example, go from idea to earth, creating it, doing it, launching it without actually, which I am notorious for, by the way. And also for people to get stuck in the planning phase, right? The planning phase, and that phase can sometimes feel like climbing Mount Everest because there is so much to do depending on the strategy that you picked, right? And then some people get lost in the emotion of that. And it is a very emotional place. I always have clients ask me, students ask me, should I be creating the product first or the marketing first? It's like the chicken or the egg. Which one should I be creating? And there really is no clean cut question. The biggest question that I always say is, if I were to bring you a lot of leads, would you be able to help them? And if the answer is yes, that means that there's some experience already under their belt with this thing that they are. And that's a good thing. So, okay, great. So let's dive deep and go into the type of experience that you have that you feel completely confident about bringing out into the world, right?
Mhm. Right.
Then we can go the marketing route. But if someone says, you know what, I just graduated from this certification and I haven't really had a chance to test it on a lot of people myself, even though I know the method works.
Mhm.
And in that capacity, it's hard to go from that to creating marketing for something that you've never experienced success in. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yeah.
So, so these are little areas in which people can get really lost in that planning phase and therefore get emotional because the doubts start to fizzle in.
Well,
And
the emotions is also water.
exactly,
Where is, so the way I operate, right? I'm always looking at the human being as the tool.
right.
Okay. And so we're beginning to understand through the creative process where our strengths are, where our weaknesses are. We want to really be honest with ourselves. It doesn't mean being mean. It doesn't mean bashing ourselves. It's like
Right.
it's like really seeing where our resistance is. Now, in the West, we are notorious for valuing the mind, right?
The mind.
The
Yes.
mind, higher education, thinking our way through things, speaking, not necessarily valuable. And so in the West, we are very mind focused. So one of the things that I love about your work is you're really heart focused. You use the mind, but you incorporate the heart. Where does it feel right? How can you serve? What is your gift? How do we make it authentically you? And I know from my own, because I'm out in the world and I'm teaching and I'm doing healing work and marketing and all that fun stuff. I also know that it can be triggering, and then we make it about us. And and if we're thinking about what the world needs, is it really what the world needs? Like how do you connect your innate gift? Like when you said create me, when you came into this world, we all came here with a specific task in hand, right? And we're doing this together. We're pulling each other up. We're all here to do this together. And yet the world wants a lot of individualism, uh, you know, ruled by the mind. It's really separating us from who we really are. So if we think about something, we can actually create, we can create, but is it really who we are,
Our purpose.
our purpose?
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of things happening because this is not a linear path. It's the spiral of learning. So
Yeah.
oftentimes we repeat, we come back to where we began. We say, oh my God, I did this again. But you didn't, because you're learning it from maybe a different angle. Maybe you're going deeper into the lesson of forgiveness, kindness, wisdom. It's like there's so many things happening. It's not just us creating a product, although we are creative beings, and one of our biggest desires is to create. That is an innate, that's what we came in with, to create, to become bigger, right? To remember who we really are. And so we're going to do that through our lived experience and our talents. But the real message is, who am I? Where am I going? Why am I here? What is my purpose? And this is where we circle back to failures. Like when we are like, there's an urgency, a mission, like you need to do something. It's okay to do it poorly and hone that, because the champion in the ring, if they have that mission statement somewhere, their soul is really pulling on them, they're not going to be able to give up, even though it might not be reflected in your bank book, right? The number of appointments, but like you have to do this anyway.
Right.
Does
Right.
that make does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. It really makes sense because when it's something that's totally in your purpose, well, I believe that purpose is about sharing, right? It's about sharing our gifts with others. And when you are in your purpose and you finally have had that awakening of knowing at least that this is your path, and you know it's your path because when you've gotten the opportunity to share, your knowledge, your wisdom, your skills with other, it just lights you up. And once you've had that first experience of being and working fully in your purpose, it's very hard, and serving others with it, it's very hard to go back to the day job. It's very hard quitting on it, right? So the question then becomes, okay, how do I make this work out in my life so that I can do this and still be able to sustain my family and do all the earthly things that we have to do? And here's where a lot of people get stuck. They get stuck in that perfectionism. It's like, nope, it has to be perfect before I ever help someone out with it, or before I put it out there, or the funnel has to be perfect. Listen, I totally get it. I mean, I'm like a perpetual recovering perfectionist, right? I have very high standards for myself and for my work. And so it can be very difficult and to go through that, and easy to stay in that failure to launch. But at the same time, there is always a tangible way of putting your brilliance out into the world and bringing in what you need in order to continue doing that. And I'll give a simple example. When I first, this was years ago when I was first getting started with coaching, and it was really all about branding and sales. And I had taken a really big certification, and so I was really revisiting and planning what my coaching package was going to look like, the things that I was going to coach on, the teachings, the strategies, all of that fun stuff. And back then, truthfully, you're going to laugh at this. I knew this girl. and she was launching, her name's Megan, and she was launching her beverage company. And I said, hey, do you need some coaching? And she's like, yeah, I would love some help with this. And I said, great. Well, I'm going to charge you $150 a month as long as you show up every single week with me and you do it for 3 months. And if it works out for you, then I would love a testimonial. And I mean, if going back to that and just thinking of the number, back then that number felt like, oh my God, someone's going to pay to talk to me. Like that's amazing. And listen, but even before that, I had a business where I would coach and train salespeople. I had an entire company where I did that for them. But this felt so different and so vulnerable. And that was my beta launch. I knew that I couldn't go out there and do the big things that I could see myself in my vision doing if I didn't get into action immediately and started making some money, even if that amount was $150. Like I think of that, I'm like, I can't believe I even thought, like, who told me to do that? I could have charged so much more. Well, let me just tell you, Megan went out and created a huge company. We created a plan and that initially launched her. It was all branding and packaging and how a sales strategy. And she is now in almost every like Walmart's, for goodness sakes. Like it's incredible the amount of success that she's had. But my point is, I started small and I refined over time. And I've always been one to believe that when God brings you there, he'll take you through it as well. And that's pretty simple, but I think that it's very worthwhile reminding ourselves of that. Because if we stay stuck in perfectionism and we stay stuck in failure to launch, and then there's no refinement of anything. I mean, if I told you the amount of times that I have revisited, for example, the Bold, Brave, and Brilliant Mastermind entire course line. I'm constantly adding another video. I changed out this other video. I changed out that module. It's always a work in progress. So, what do you think it takes for someone to allow themselves to launch something that they're not 100% sure is perfect?
Well, they should be working with you. What I loved about what you did, I mean, seriously, you know how to break it down, make it easy. So I was joking, but really not. So we're all born, right? We have an angel, a devil on each shoulder, right? And that devil is our ego, the fear of failure, being seen, shut up, you're not good enough, all the things that keep us small. And what I heard you say is that you just about gave it away so that you would get the energy moving,
Yep.
right? And you would get a testimonial. So there is an energy exchange and you would develop confidence. So there really was an exchange of energy that was fair.
Yeah. And that was
And then,
important.
yeah. And so we have this mind, right? Because we're in the West and we think too much. We use our brain too much, which if we become the slave of the mind, we want to become the master of our ship, not the slave, right? Not the
Correct.
And so it has to do a lot with will and developing our strength and removing that negative ego. So that's some of the stuff that we do on a spiritual journey or healing work, right? We tune up, we remove things that don't belong to us so that more of us can shine. But you gave yourself permission and you pushed that mind aside,
Right.
right? So that you could make it doable for yourself. The mind is tricky, and there's a lot of like hacks that are available to do that. The thing is, we just want to start taking action because that's when the energy starts moving.
Right. And,
Mm.
when you say taking action, it makes me want to give someone an easy formula to go from idea, inspiration, and straight into action. But it doesn't work that way. You really have to go down the four worlds, like you said. And sometimes you are in the planning phase, and then you have to go back and revisit the vision because something in the planning phase bumped you out of being in the zone. You and I were talking a little bit about this before the call started, how when we have that desire to bring something that we created into the world, we have that vision, it's exciting or scary. But there's this deep, beautiful desire that if I closed my eyes in my imagination, it just looks like pure stardust. Like it's beautiful, it's shiny, it's just that thing, right? And so we set out on the journey. It reminds me of the Fool in the tarot cards, right? You go out on the journey, there's that beautiful desire and everything. But then you go into the planning phase and you start doubting yourself and you start becoming afraid, like you said, and you start wondering who's going to judge you, if you're good enough, if you're not. And somehow you're no longer in that energy that was the original Stardust energy, right?
Mhm.
So especially as spiritual entrepreneurs, I think it's so easy to get lost and in that path because we're supposed to know this stuff already. And this is where
Why?
it's so brilliant. Well, that's what the negative ego tells us a lot. I should know this already. I know how to manifest. I already know the laws of the universe. But when you're lost and you just got bumped out from that stream of beautiful desire, you don't recognize it all the time, which brings me to your office. And you're like, oh my goodness, Marielle, you think it's you. You think all this stuff. And you just start telling me all this stuff. I mean, I hadn't even talked to you in the past week or 2 weeks before that. And right then and there, you were able to give me it's almost like you opened a window to my subconscious, to my insides, and you just read me. You're like, Marielle, this is not you. This is you. And this is what's actually happening. And I was like, oh my God, so true. We all need that one friend, that one person that can call us out on our bullshit and hold that space and that intention to put you back into the flow of that beautiful stardust energy that is your original intention and desire and thing that you are going that you can manifest, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, and I mentioned to you, I was like, well, I'm creating this thing and it's just, I'm like, I'm creating totally different and this is happening and this is happening. And then you said, yes, that is your art. That is your art. And I said, well, I said, so I wish it felt like art. Like so many times we have this romantic idea of an artist in a beautiful swanky loft and we're just throwing paint at our canvas and just this beautiful masterpiece just shows up and then we go for lunch and then we go shopping and we go to Saks Fifth Avenue and spend all of our money. We just sold our piece of art for $50,000, right?
Yeah.
And so I said that to you and you started laughing. And I said, it doesn't feel like that. Sometimes it feels like I'm literally like there's a death, like I'm birthing something.
Hmm.
And what did you say?
You were.
Yeah.
So if you have been watercoloring for, 15 years, you didn't start out great, right? You didn't understand the water and how it would affect the paints and how the colors would even apply on paper. They're not as vibrant as in the little containers. And like, you sucked in the beginning. But when we're children, right? I mean, children fall down and children are fearless. They're just having an experience and they're falling down and they're laughing. And the older we get, the more tight we get and the more afraid we get.
That's true.
And so here you are, and you're creating something totally new. It's not something you've done previously where you knew the ropes. So you don't know what you're doing. And it's all still up in the fire. It's still, up in an formed place. It's just the inspiration, right? And I was just going to say that, you're really good. You're meditating. You're starting to dream about it, right? You're bringing it down through air. You're doing it. And then at the same time, we have to manage this ego that is telling us, oh my God, this is uncomfortable. This is painful. Somebody else, it's beautiful. Like, why aren't I doing it the way they're doing it? It's supposed to look like this, right? And I think I loved Lady Gaga's story because she lives in a lot of pain because she is an artist, she is a creator. Everything she does is a masterpiece. And so she's actually in a lot of
Mm,
pain until that music is born. So listen to other people, how they do it. That is the American, or maybe the human lie, is it's just supposed to flow from you and be easy.
exactly.
And
That's the expectation.
it's a
And
lie. It's a lie. It's a lie. Because if you're really pulling something in, you're going places you've never been before. Now, if
correct.
you do it a couple times, it gets easier and easier, and then you get to see, how the different elements play out. But we have to be aware, right? Mindful of and understand the different forces of the universe so that it's not so personal. We need to step back. Like esoteric knowledge is the whole, it's seeing the big picture. Like astrology, right? It's not astrology that is like Tuesday, you're going to get some money. It's not the exoteric astrology that's all about me, 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 me. It's
Right.
the esoteric astrology where you step back from the picture. It's like a Japanese painting where it's like all the landscape and the human is like a grain of sand. The whole is the big picture. So what are you here to support? And I loved how you were talking about service before. What are you here to bring to the world?
Yes. Yes. And that brings me to
Mhm,
the point of when you're ready to bring this thing to the world, when you're ready to show everyone that new baby that you have, right?
mhm,
It freaks a lot of people out. It just does. Well, not as a mother, but why? Because it can be even more vulnerable to show up and on stage or on camera on a video to talk about this thing that comes from you, from inside you, and put it out there. Right. So, one of the things that I get asked the most is how can I show up confidently? And I can go really in depth on that, but I'll say this when you show up out of service to others and thinking, how can I create this live stream today and help others with it? And when our mind is focused on serving others and we let go of the need to have people show up and engage, have people to like, when we let go of the expectations of what that piece of content or piece of wisdom that you put out is doing, that's when it becomes easier for you to show up and to talk about your thing. And for sure, you have to learn how to do that. I see a lot of people get lost in that piece and sometimes give up because they created this masterpiece, but then they didn't learn how to put it out into the world, how to get the courage and the boldness to actually learn to be fully self-expressed and talk about your thing without shying away, without minimizing your brilliance, but doing it in service to others. So for me, it's always worked, and it's the number one tip I always give my students. When you show up, stop thinking about how you look. Stop thinking about what this is going to do for you. And instead, start thinking about how much you love what you're talking about, how much you want to serve others. And when we do that, something happens inside of our brain. And we are no longer in our head, but we actually drop into our body and into our heart.
mhm.
And that's when you can easily and with more I guess, you put out your brilliance. into the world because it's not about you anymore. It's about others. It's kind of like being a mother, right? Motherhood is so much about them. And that's kind of how it is. Like you have to kind of mother your content and say, you know what, here you go. This is in service to you. And it really does make showing up a lot more easy. And I always believe, and I believed this from the very beginning. And as I've grown in my craft, I noticed that it's not everybody believes this. But for me, I always had the mindset of there's someone out there that this is meant for. And it's going to reach that person. Whoever this was meant for, they're going to watch this today, or maybe not today, maybe in 3 years. And I've actually had clients before that were maybe inside of one of my groups, and years later came back and said, "Oh my God, Marielle, I actually watched this video." And then they tell me what the video was. And I'm like, "Oh my God, I made that video 3 years ago." But they were in my group and went, started watching videos from before, whatever. And then when the time is right, the dots start to connect.
And just by going in and doing it and serving, you're strengthening and you're starting to like mold more and believe in your mission.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's all a growth process. You create this thing, you put that out into the world. Please, when you do, go celebrate yourself. That is already a huge accomplishment. And then
Yeah.
chunk it down. Go help one, two, three people,
Mhm.
right? One of the best and most easy ways of launching something brand new is doing it locally. I know, Marielle, I want to work, I want to build my online business. Yes, and you will build an online business, but also when somebody meets you face to face, and there's a lot of opportunities to do things locally, it immediately overcomes that know, like, and trust factor. And you get the energy moving. You start testing your product. You start really seeing what you need to tweak. You start bringing in some money. So for anyone out there who is completely new to the online space, or maybe this is your first course that you're creating, or your first offer, your first event, try thinking of it like, who can I help around me? I mean, usually we all live in small towns or clusters of towns where there's thousands of people. Surely there is someone you can help that's close by.
Yeah. And frankly, the energy now, loneliness is one of the top problems that people are having.
Yeah.
So just being able to see somebody that just may listen or that cares, you can't underestimate that.
No. And with that said, let's just quickly touch on the energetic part of this. So, as I'm sitting in your office, you were about to do some energy work on me.
Hmm.
And can you talk a little bit about that, and how can energy work help someone in their process of creating their dream business or an offer?
So when I began studying years ago, I was looking for my own healing because there was none around. And I certainly didn't have the understanding because, the teachers didn't have the training or whatever. I was learning stuff. Um, my first class, I was like the student that other students want. I was having really amazing experiences under my hands. And that's how I started. I got into business is some other students took me aside and said, "Listen, I want to come to you. I want to pay you." Because the sessions, I couldn't even believe how good they were, you know, because this was 45 years ago. Like nobody was talking about it. It was way before new age, stuff. It was still very much hidden. And so boom, I was in business. But there was always somebody that came that I couldn't help. You know, there was only so much local stuff and the quality, there is no quality control. But I was working, my clients were happy. And then a friend of mine, she took a class with a teacher. I didn't do it because I got information directly. And I was like, doesn't get better than this. Why would I go someplace and study with somebody else when I get it,
I have the
But
direct link.
yeah, yeah. And the truth is, right, that was one of my first lessons. You just don't know what you don't know.
That's true.
Um, but our work had been very similar. And when she was initiated and she was starting to work and she was studying with a teacher, she just had her work just totally changed. I couldn't keep up. I'm very competitive. I want to be the best I want to be the best.
And you
And
are.
it, well, at that time, it was clear that I was not because I couldn't keep up with her. So there was really tangible results. And at the time, then I started, she had done enough work. She was teaching, and I began my journey with her because I trusted her and all. And my work changed, so again, tangible results. And then there's always somebody that came to me that I couldn't help. Like, I was getting really complicated cases. People were going to doctors and having, they wanted more or they weren't getting the results they want. And so I was dealing with some really interesting cases. And what happened was I just kept studying with my teacher. And like you said, I traveled around the world a couple times. I went to Japan 22 times. I studied in Canada 4 times a year for about 18 years. And I still study with my teacher 4 or 5 times a year across the country because there's just so much to learn. So what my original superpower of seeing things and also being really an empath, I feel I was quite dysfunctional as a kid because I felt everything. I just didn't know. That turned out to all this turned out to be my superpower. So now when people come to me, I have a really nice toolbox of different healings that work for different things. And our training is really some of the highest quality of understanding the vast human energy system, the
Yeah.
element, the etheric, the chakra, the aura, the etheric energy, just like really understanding so that I know what I'm working in and how it's going to work on people. But I also see and hear and feel. So when somebody comes in, like when you came in, I could clearly see it wasn't you. I was just right. I was shocked. I was like, Marielle, what happened? you know? And so then, I was able to match the right healing for you to pull out all the stuff that it's frankly, it's like being out in a dirty city, right? You're out in the world and you had all this gunk and all this stuff that's not you clogging up that beautiful, pristine energy. And so we just needed to clean you up some and do a few other things so that you can function as high vibe as you want. And that's part of the what I love about my work, right? Oh, I did work for free when I first started this because I wanted to know how this work would impact people. And so I did need, when I wanted to learn about how this work could impact veterans, damn, like I wanted to get my hands on veterans, right? They've been through a lot.
Yeah.
And so I have some tools that like I know would help. And so how did I learn? It's like, come on in, let me do this for you. I worked with kids with autism. Oh my God, there was like really some great shifts. Now, it doesn't take away the autism, but it makes these kids and adults, it's like being in an electrical socket. And so they're just, like many times they're really sensitive to tactile or, the energy
Right.
around them. There's a reason for that. So I worked on a ton of kids with autism. So, like I just wanted to learn. So I dived into it, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and I wanted to learn.
Yeah. The first thing that came to mind when you said it's not all you, and I first started thinking, well, if it's not me, what is it? What's clogging my energy, right? Because we do think that it's all us. It's just that I'm being lazy, or I don't have enough determination, or I'm not smart enough, or whatever. So we start thinking it's us. And you said, no, 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 it's not you. So I immediately went to, well, if it's not me, what is it? And what I understand is, not all of our thoughts and our self-talk, not all of it comes from us. There are things that come from the collective and our environment and the things that, living in an orderly house that's beautiful makes you feel different than living in a house that is dirty and you can't walk around. So I understand it that way. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah, and it depends on, so now also we have the interesting phenomena are everybody is psychic and the world is ascending, right? We're all growing into the light and more of our potential. There is a big theme. And so people are having experiences because the veils are shifting. And so people are having different experiences. And there's a lot of people that are coming to me. They're just like, I don't know what's going on. Something like, they're having experiences that they've never had before.
But they can't
And
explain.
and if you're great, if you see things, it's really clear that you see things. But if you feel things or hear things, sometimes hearing, it's not like hearing, like I'm hearing you now, but it
Mhm.
feels like my own thought, but it might not be. And
Right.
so, what is really going on? Is it me? Is it you? Is it the collective? You know, is it for me to grow my business? Is it for me? Like, what is it? And so, we have a lot of things that can be distractions.
Yeah, yeah. And it's hard to conceptualize with our mind that which we can't see, but we do feel. And in business, I'm going to speak to that in specific, it can feel like a lot of resistance. When you feel like you have a lot of resistance, when you look at the to-do list that Marielle gave you, that your coach gave you, and you kind of get overwhelmed. Well, not all of that is you. Some of that is actually because of, you have clogged parts in your energy system. And when they get, and yes, we can do a lot with mindset, but you can't do everything with mindset. And there are things that are, and we don't have time to talk about this today, but we will in another time. There's a lot of ancestral energies that we bring with us. There are energies from just, for example, not forgiving someone something. That brings along its own energy. Having so much fear, that brings its own energy. And the way that I understand it is all of these things kind of clog up our energy system. So when we show up at our desk in our beautiful office and we're looking at our to-do list, we have so much resistance that we'd rather go and do the dishes, or we'd rather go and get, a load of laundry in. That's all resistance. I totally believe in helping someone heal their past and their mindset, but also having someone as skilled as you to help remove and help alleviate that extra energy that I can't really touch. I have to say, and then, I know you have to go, and I have my mastermind too. But after you worked on me, my carpal tunnel went away. Totally. So Bobby was like, no way. I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna be able to do an extra 2 sessions of pickleball this week.
Woohoo! But that happened for your dad. That happened for your dad too.
That happened for my dad too. And it just amazes me. It's just confirmation always that we are such vast energetic beings and there is so much more to the unseen world that we don't really understand quite yet with our mind. But we're getting there, Sue. We're getting there. So
The drop in a bucket, Marielle. I'm really, when you talk about infinite, we still have a limited belief of what that means.
yeah,
And when you really experience some of this, the well, just like there's so much.
there is so much, so much. So thank you so much, Sue, for making time. And by the way, you guys, you will be seeing Sue a lot more because we just have such juicy, juicy conversations that we want to bring you in on. So this is not the last time you'll be seeing her. But real quick, Sue, where can someone find you if they're looking to connect with you?
You can catch me on Facebook, Sue Ananian. I am Sue at sueananian.com. That's Ananian. My website is down for the moment, but that's sueananian.com. And just say hi.
And just come back next week because we have more brilliance to share with you next week. And yeah, stay tuned because I do have some surprises coming. So we'll see you next week at the same time, Wednesdays at noon Eastern Standard Time. And if you have anything that you would like to ask or topics that you'd like for us to cover, please don't hesitate in reaching out. You can reach out to me here on Facebook, or you can send me a quick email to Marielle at mariellealvarado.com. And I would be super excited to answer those and maybe even bring you on. So have an amazing rest of your day. Sue, I love you. Thank
I
you.
love you too, Marielle. Bye, everybody.
Bye.